Now please join me in giving all of these lovely folks a round of applause. I'll pass it on to you, Julie, to moderate the discussion.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you guys for being here. I'd like to begin with asking Jaya some questions. Can you share a little bit about your art practice?
Absolutely. My art practice is multifaceted. My painting practice, my studio practice, is really where I get to be in my, mad scientist laboratory. That's where I get to explore. That's where I get to do weird stuff and develop my series of work. So my studio practice is incredibly necessary to my well-being. It's where I really just get to be me and explore and put away something that I don't like and develop a series that might be for a show. My mural practice is, I would say, much more structured in the way that when I go up on a wall, I want to have a plan of what I'm doing. And that's another level of business mindedness. I do commercial murals, community murals, and I would say that there's a spectrum of murals and also like within that pricing structure, levels of capacity. And so the mural practice is not just doing one type of mural, but it's also exploring different avenues of murals and public art in general. My design practice, I have to say that when I do design, if I'm doing a logo or a poster design or putting together a website, the website logo business card design, that's what I really do for my friends, because that's not my passion project. That's where I want to help uplift my friends in their business. And, I know that I could throw together a pretty dope website for them. And so I'll put that together. I would say that the design work is in that caliber, a little bit more on the back burner and a little bit more personal, and I really pick and choose my projects. From a design standpoint on a larger scale, especially with what we're going to talk about with Weidner, that's where it is much more, I would say, expansive and certainly requires a business mindset because you're working with a lot of different voices in the room. The last part of my artistic practice, okay, we talked about studio, we talked about murals, we talked about design. I taught for 15 years. I had my own teaching practice. And what that means is I did not teach for a school. I developed my own classes, and from those classes there were offshoots of classes because usually your students want to learn something else that they want to hone in on in those classes, so therefore you have to develop another class to talk about color mixing. From that color mixing class, the students are going to have challenge working with matte medium, so you do a glazing class. And so there's a whole multi-pronged aspect to my teaching practice. That was really my bread and butter before the pandemic. The pandemic was the big shift from teaching, showing into doing murals. So my artistic practice is definitely multifaceted, focusing on studio work, mural work. Now like with this big honking thing with Weidner, definitely design work. And I would say that my teaching has evolved into more of a mentorship program where I'm really picking and choosing who I'm working one-on-one with to develop themselves, and also just continuing to lecture and do panel work.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I wanted to know, I was curious about, you mentioned the pandemic and how that kind of shifted things for you. I think it's important for us to have timelines in terms of things like that. How long have you considered yourself a professional artist, and how long have you owned your business? Because I'm assuming those two things didn't start at the same time.
You're right. Timeline-wise, we go in the Wayback Machine to when Jaya was younger. I would say that when I considered myself a professional artist, I can pinpoint it to 2003. And I did that math this morning, and I know that you guys can do that math yourselves. In 2003, that was when I really started showing and selling work regularly. That doesn't mean that I knew what I was doing, but I was showing and selling my work regularly. It was a bit haphazard, it was a bit bohemian, it was through this like nomadic art group that we just sort of inserted ourselves with permission into unused spaces during the dot-com bust. And you know, full circle. I wonder if that might, you know, perk up again. But we had consistent shows, and you know, I began developing a sort of like a ragtag group of collectors and folks that, you know, were following my work. So in 2003, that was when that just sort of launched. It took a few years later for me to realize that I was a business owner. I knew I was an artist. I knew I was an artist from, you know, little baby Jaya, you know, knew she was an artist. But being a business owner, being a businesswoman, that was a watershed moment in 2015. In 2015, I discovered what a Schedule C was.
Talk about that.
I will talk about that. So if you don't know what a Schedule C is, get to know what a Schedule C is and love it. Fall in love with a Schedule C. There is a love-hate relationship with the Schedule C, because the Schedule C is what helps you become a sole proprietor. And from that Schedule C, that's where you know your numbers and you start to consider yourself as a business person and your art as a business. Something that has always just resonated with me is business is my art and my art is business. I want to be as successful on canvas, on paper. Like when I'm doing my taxes, I want to be, I want that to be with ease. I want it to be with ease going after grants. I want it to be with ease speaking with art consultants, with architects. I want it to be with ease doing the non-creative stuff. And so you can be expert and incredible and brilliant and the top of your field of what you do. However, if there is a falling short of being able to support that with numbers and with a structure, there's only so high that you can get in your business. And you are your own glass ceiling, because to expand, you need to know what tools are available. And you know, a lot of artists, a lot of newbie artists, and I don't think that there's a lot of newbie artists in here, because when I said Schedule C, a bunch of you chuckled. So if you know what a Schedule C is, you know, you're on the right path. But a lot of artists don't know how to take full advantage financially of their craft. And you don't need to be expert at this. God knows that I'm not. But you need to at least know what you don't know and reach out to those who can help you understand your number. You absolutely don't need to have all the answers, but the resources and advocates for you can, you know, help uplift you and help you create or know what tools you need to achieve that next level.
Speaking of tools, I wanted to go out of order with my questions a little bit. I think a powerful routine can be a really great tool. Can you talk about your routine as far as the business side of Jaya goes?
Sure. My routine is dependent on when I know when I'm freshest, most fresh, at my highest level of freshness. And it's going to be different for everyone, but for me, I'm a morning person. I'll be on fire in the morning. I know that morning is when I'm going to answer my emails. Morning is when I'm going to sit in front of the computer. I'm going to look at my Google Calendar. Morning is when I'm going to work on any type of grant writing, any type of proposal. Morning is when I'm looking at opportunities of projects coming up. After a certain time of day, I know when that window of time has transitioned into I'm not going to say past, but it has transitioned into something not as effective. So my routine is I covet my mornings. I know that I'm going to be firing on all cylinders. So morning is when I am doing businessing. And I love that term because it's businessing. It's businessing. When I'm on project, in terms of when I'm on the wall, that's a different routine than being in studio. I also plan my studio days. I have to be type A when it comes to my business. When I'm painting, that's when I can, get weird. But my organization, you know what I'm talking about. You're like, let's see that's a bad idea, but we're just going to keep doing it and see if that works out, But my type A is when I'm looking at my Google Calendar. So that way I can quantify. I'm going to share. So I'm working on a body of work for a solo show that's coming up at Pence Gallery. And thank you. And so I mathematically think I need X number of pieces for this space. I know I'm going to need a wow piece. I know I'm going to need this. So I kind of have an idea of my inventory before jumping in. Knowing me, I know I'm going to overproduce, that way I could whittle down what I want to show them. To create that, I'm looking at my available time that I can go into the studio. And so I can say that I spent 41 days in my studio, looking at weekends. I counted them. I did 41 days in my studio. With where I'm at with my paintings, I created 51 pieces. So that means I have little itty bitty ones. I have a bunch of handfuls. I've got 12 by 12s. I've got, from itty bitty postcard size up until 48 by 48. So I have a spectrum of 51 pieces. That doesn't mean I'm going to have 51 pieces in the show. But I can say within that 41 days, and I created this, I can anticipate by X date that I can have this type of inventory to be able to weed through to create the most powerful show. We all create differently. Not everyone in this room can in 41 days do 51 pieces, or if you do, it might not look to the best of your ability. But you know your best way to work. And so you time yourself. You create a routine so that you can develop what you need to. And I also work really well under pressure. That is not to say that's a good thing. I work really well under pressure, especially with writing, or if I need to create a piece like that. So sometimes my routine might fall short, and I'll have it in the back of my head. Oh man, you got to get that rolling. You can see it on your Google Calendar. It's coming up. You can see that coming up. And there will be, I would say, energetically, a push to get my ass in gear. And that creates a completely different vibe with the painting process and writing process. And sometimes that's what that piece needs. And if I had spent, an organized amount of time on that one piece or on that one grant, it might not have that same kick as if it is naturally better for me to do that under pressure. I'm not saying that's the smartest or healthiest way to do it, but it's no matter how organized you are, there's always that left turn. And I think as creatives, we can navigate that effectively to each in our own. So from a routine standpoint, morning person, I veer out of routine in some instances. My routine is making sure that my Google Calendar is straight, knowing what's coming up. My routine is making sure that I get into studio, and my routine on mural projects, that I need to be that is where, okay, we're going to be on the wall at 8. We're going to leave at 4. This is who's going to be there. This is what we're going to do that day. That's a whole other level of like militant organization when you're on the, or when I'm on the wall. Might be different for other people, but I'm a control freak when that happens.
And my last question, because we're talking about mural opportunities, can you just talk about some resources that artists should know about in terms of acquiring opportunities?
Absolutely. I think that's
Could
a real.
just be like a list, or
Yeah, like I'm just going to give you guys like a bullet point right now. I check out calls for entry frequently, cafe.org or .com, calls for entry.
Okay.
And that is not the only resource. You want to get on the mailing list for like public art commissions for different cities, states. You want to know what opportunities. Okay, so speaking specifically with mural opportunities, so or public art opportunities, there can be projects that you will be applying for an airport opportunity. Have also assets that you can reach out to, because I'm not going to do an airport project all by myself. I'm going to call on, my crew to say, we need XYZ. Do we need to have a fabricator? Do we need to know what a vinyl wrap? Do I need to propose a vinyl wrap? Who's my resource for that? Let me get some quotes of how much something like that might be before I apply for the opportunity, before I out budget myself with this one element. But calls for entry has a lot of opportunities, and you're able to organize that by checking boxes. Like, I only want to look at public art. I only want to look at exhibitions. I want to look at grants and fellowships. So calls for entry is a really good resource. But yeah, also getting on the mailing list of other cities and states. The knowing your resources in town, for instance, knowing someone like Zoe, getting to know, like have them know you too. Reach out and say, hey, this is, and I think that Zoe can also probably like talk a little bit more about like the protocol of something like that, but get to know your resources in town that work with or that work to place art. So it requires a little bit of digging, but I would say like the first resource would be calls for entry and checking out public art commissions in neighboring cities and states.
Thank you so much for all of those insightful answers. I feel like that was a really wonderful list of resources. As an emerging artist, I'm always curious to know what other artists are using as far as their list of resources. So that is always, thanks for not gatekeeping. Sorry.
I thought of another one. California for the Arts, California Arts Council. Those are a couple of others that you can check out. And I mean, the internet is pretty smart. You can just Google artist grants, yeah. Art opportunities. But yeah, California Arts Council, and I think Californians for the Arts for Californians.
Since we talked about Zoe as a resource, I think this is a wonderful segue into your role here at Weidner. And I would like the people here to know a little bit more about your path and what led you here. So can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So thank you. Also, you said so many great points that I really want to talk about as well, because I think Jaya is a resource for me as well, because she kind of, she brings up a lot of good points, and I want to talk about a lot of the things that you said. So thank you. But my path is a little crazy. Some of you were at the Creativity Speaks event on Tuesday, so you might hear a couple, repeats here. But I kind of started out like all of you. I was painting for many, many hours a day. I ended up dropping out of school because they wouldn't let me take a painting class, and I was like, okay, I gotta go. So it started out kind of revisiting my initial passion for the arts, and then I tried the full-time artist thing. I had my own solo shows that I had to ask for. I made it a goal to get into a gallery, and by way of doing that, I started curating for that gallery. This is in Seattle. I lived there for a while. So it started out with this desire to fulfill this passion and this drive to be a full-time artist, and it kind of morphed into curating and working with artists, getting on public art projects, a lot of volunteering, a lot of asking to be somewhere, even when you have no place to be there. So I think a lot of it has been a series of me sort of carving out a space for myself so that I could learn, because obviously I dropped out of school. So I had to find ways to educate myself. So I kind of went out into the communities that I was living in and asked to show up. And I volunteered and interned at artist collectives in Seattle, learning installation art and curating, and just really how to integrate the community within my practice. And my own practice kind of started dwindling away. But I had this overwhelming desire to facilitate and to learn how I could be of service to a community that I once really, was connected to. So all that to say, I am an art teacher as well. I teach middle school to high school at a private school called Capital Innovations Academy, right across the street from Jaya's studio, which we just figured out the other day. She said, come over, and I was in the parking lot. So, it's just an amalgamation of so many different things that I love, and people are what I love the most. And without people, we don't have art, which is my second love. So a lot of the practice has just been finding ways to integrate everything as a whole. So I was curating an exhibition, and I met Will, and he said, come tour the office. And so I came and toured the office, and now I've figured out that my role is an art consultant. And for me, that goes beyond just placing the art, but I am a resource for all of you as well. So that consultant there's a duality to that for me.
I think I want to expand a little bit more on that as well. Will really covered the Weidner's role in these projects, but I want to know to what extent what does your art consultant job mean, and what does it entail? Talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, yeah. So aside from, having that client-facing relationship where I'm kind of digging for that information, I want to know what the client is really wanting, because for me, the art is an emotional piece. So we're not just decorating, we are ingraining energy into that space and into these people's lives that they will see every day. The people that are coming into that space, it's really important for me to make that a prominent element when I approach a project. But the consulting, me as a resource for artists, it's about, and I know we kind of talked a little bit about this, there's not always a lot of space on people's plates to sort of go out and seek out that information, but I really am here to answer questions. A lot of the things that I know or that I've practiced have come from just that. There's a lot of networking that's gone into how I've gotten here, and I want to encourage that to the fullest extent that you guys have that ability to do so. Jaya, for example, with the grant that you received for the mural, she put that out there to me. If you know of anything, like this is what I'm looking for. And just, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit more as I go into sort of what goes into this process when you're working with an art consultant. But I think, does that cover that for you?
I think I wanted you to touch on the communication aspects of it, because my understanding of consultancy and even like business consultants, they handle a lot of the communication. And you also call yourself a liaison, right? In what ways, to the fullest extent that you're able to cover, how do you liaison?
Okay, yeah. I mean, that one's tough to answer in a linear way, but I think for me, my main goal when working with an artist on a project is to make sure that the artist has everything that they need in that process. It's not just you receive a project, you find an artist, and then that artist completes the work for that project. It's not just a handoff. And I think, in terms of what that looks like and what that might feel like, it might feel a little intimidating. Like we're in this boardroom and there's like whiteboard walls and you're like, it's kind of a different breed, but I want, when I work with people, I want them to feel like they have everything that they need and that to be successful. And the communication and the liaison portion is, I am here to sell you as an artist and your work. And when I bring concepts to clients, like it's my job to pass that emotion off to them and to get them to really understand the value of what you guys are creating and making. And so I think that's, that I take that off the plate. You don't have to advocate for yourself. That's what I'm here to do. And when we're working on projects, going down the list, do you have your, I'm kind of going out of order, but do you have your insurance? Are you factoring in rentals, your supplies, your time, your labor, your what are some other ones? Travel, lodging, if we're working on on a public art piece outside, murals, sculptures, factoring all those things into your budget. But then also, did you pack Advil? Like, what if you get a headache? I'm serious. It goes in. But I think to kind of tie back to, I know I'm supposed to talk, I'm not great at talking about like all the things that I've done, but I've done a lot of volunteer work for production on art fairs and for murals and for exhibitions in general. Even if it's not my job, I've always shown up to learn that process and to be able to feed that for everybody involved, because to get a large project done, you need so many things. And I really learned how to nurture the people around me, because when people are taken care of, that's where the success is for me. That's where artists feel successful. They feel heard. They feel acknowledged in more than just one or two ways. It goes very, very deep for me. Jose was just on this project with us, and he thought he might have COVID. I drove by the mural site, tossed a box of tests out the window, and I said, take your COVID test. I really did. And he like threw his back out, and I have these really great like patches for, and I brought those, and then we didn't have cones, and cars were zinging by the alleyway, and I was like, you need freaking cones. So I brought cones, and there's so many. I was lucky enough to have him so close so that I could really take care of him during that project, because he was out there for a month. But checking on, is there a place for him to store all of his materials? Where is he going to park? Does he have access to these things? And sort of, I think that's a really good piece to that liaison portion, is like anticipating the needs and being able to fill those. I'm not just sitting at my computer all day. It is a go, go, go. And I'm really checking off those boxes and making sure that the client is getting what they're wanting, and the artist is also feeling fulfilled and happy, because when you don't have that, like, why are we doing what we're doing? So I think, yeah.
I think as like I plunder into the business world. Well, that's what it feels like, just like kind of hurtling down.
Yeah.
As I plunder into the business world, I recognize how valuable it is to have these like handholds. And my friend and I, we call them handholds, and I kind of see your role as sort of like a really gentle handhold for people who might need more assistance.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot to kind of forget about, and I like the handhold thing, but also it's an empowering. Like, you're going to take these tools, everything that I might anticipate or that we both learn from a given project, no matter what scale that is, you're going to take that and implement that into the rest of your practice, because you're going to think about things that you didn't think about. Like, and then mom came along and packed the Advil and the Band-Aids, but I don't know, those are kind of just some things that I could think off the top of my head, but yeah.
Speaking of, what was my question? Sorry, as I gather my thoughts. You touched on some things that I think every artist should know about. You touched on things like insurance, like these are more like businessy terms. If you can just reiterate those things, like if there are artists in the room who are just completely unfamiliar with their to-do list or their list of things that they need to understand to have this kind of collaboration, just like putting terms and words out there.
Absolutely. Hello. So kind of I'll go from the top, and I'm sure, a lot of these things everyone has covered already, but having business cards, having a accessible, functional website that people like me can go through and see what works you have available, take a peek at your portfolio, that's your catch-all, that's your one-stop shop to say, here's everything that you might need to know, want, or see. And then, yes, the insurance is a huge portion. If you're going to do on-site work, you need to be covered by a private insurance company so that you can provide that to us when we get your paperwork going and get you, contracts and into our system, because we're taking on a liability and you're taking on a liability as well. So you need to make sure that when we're giving 1099s or W-9s, you have all of those things ready and accessible to hand off. I think a lot of times when we talk about budgets, I hear all the time, I don't know how to price that, but starting to acknowledge your labor, like Jaya has said, I spent 41 days in the studio and I produced 51 pieces of work for this show. Every single time you have an event, an exhibition, or if you're participating in anything, all of those hours, having that cataloged, the time that you're spending, the amount of materials that you're purchasing, looking at how you can best acquire lifts, boom or scissor lifts or scaffolding. What kind of equipment are you going to need? That goes into your budget, your travel time, your lodging, your, and then also to get compensated, really treating this like a job. And I think it's easy to kind of neglect some of those other things because it's expansive. It's a lot. There's a lot on the plate. There's a lot to cover. And then in terms of two-dimensional work, if we're putting that inside a building, having everything hang ready. So that's that, when you go and drop off work at a gallery for an exhibition, everything needs to be ready to go up on the walls. So that's kind of my catch-all term for make sure everything is hang ready. Like, are you hang ready? Just have everything right in front of you. Know what you need to provide in addition to the work and your time.
That was really wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to ask about your role as an art consultant. Sorry, I'm looking back at my questions right now. So we touched on things like insurance, logistics, installation, shipping. I wanted to ask or bring forward something that we had talked about, the individual licensing, as this is kind of like unique to your personal role as an art consultant for Weidner. Can you say something about that? So
at the beginning, I kind of spitballed off some of the work that we do. We do public art, murals, sculptures, catalog work often goes into spaces, and depending on the budget and what I can make happen, we've been implementing one-time use licenses. So that was another thing that I wanted to add to the list. When you do your inventory and you're kind of cataloging your time, having high-res scans of all of your work for situations like this, often artists will license their work commercially, and then sites like art.com or some of those other commercial licensing sites will purchase that work. But there's not a lot of, I've heard from many artists, there's not a lot of money in that. That's just like a thing. But for us, I really like to do what I can, even if it's not in the budget, to purchase an entire painting, an original body of work, a digital file from your scan. We will purchase from the artist directly, and there's a contract in place that says, we're not going to reproduce it. It's going to go here. This is the date. This is where it's going to be going. We will take care of the printing and the framing and the installation of all of that. So really, it's a handoff, and if you don't have prints or we need to go larger, that's sort of where we have that flexibility and you're able to pass off your work, but know that it's not going to go anywhere further than that. That agreement is just between you and us.
You're talking a lot about different types of artwork as well. And on a personal note, I'm very curious to know, like, what types of artists is Weidner looking to collaborate with, or what types of artists have you collaborated with? So you talked about Sly, who's a photographer. It seems like this is kind of, there's a variety of individuals who are involved. So can you just list off some artists that you're interested in collaborating with?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the sky really is the limit. We had a client recently that actually came into our space and we had a meeting in here. It looked different. There were tables, but he looked up and loved this light installation that we have, which we fabricated in-house. But then I kind of pulled some things out of him, and we were in here like brainstorming for, I don't know, an hour and a half. And I thought of Ember, and she kind of came into the conversation, and we developed a prototype for like a fiberglass resin sculpture. So I think that whatever your practice is, there's going to be space to implement that in the future. I think that it's a lot of people, a lot of clients sort of think of art as this two-dimensional kind of practice, but there really isn't a limit to what we can do. I mean, there is a limit to what we can do, but we can't. I think I can build a house, but I know that's not true. We can, there are some limitations to what is possible, but I think, Jaya is a muralist, but we are working with her to fabricate this, how would we even describe this facade to sort of add dimension to her mural?
Yeah, we're going to talk about it.
We're going to talk about it. Yeah, we're going to talk about it. But I think, whatever your practice is, I want to get to know you and what that looks like, because I think part of my art brain that I have, I'm art brain first and business side second. I'm learning that along with everybody. So I'm able to kind of see something that might not have been directly said, but then we can kind of create this vision and kind of implement art in many different ways. So, we don't just work with painters or printmakers or photographers. That your practice has a space, and I'm here to kind of bring that out and see how we can put that out in the wild.
I think this is a wonderful segue into the collaboration between the two of you, since we brought that up already. Can you tell us about the client that it's for and the physical artwork and what it entails? And this is the questions that I'm going to be asking are for the both of you, so either of you can answer.
So this project, where I'm working with Weidner, to be clear, I was brought in by the art consultant. And my role in the project is I created a mural and perforated metal panel design where it's going to be fabricated by Weidner and installed in a new development, new multi-use housing development in Sacramento. So there's the cat's out of the bag. I know, like, I haven't dropped anything about this yet. So my design that I did digitally, I did it on Procreate. I created an abstract mural that's going to be produced about 20 feet high by, I think, like a little over 100 feet long. And in front of that is going to be a perforated metal panel design that is going to be lit from in between. So at nighttime, the design will be like illuminated. You see it through the perforated metal. So I created both of those designs per the parameters of the art consultant and the developer. From that design, we're extrapolating parts of the mural, parts of the panel, and those are going to be auxiliary other elements other elements in the development. There's going to be a canopy over the entrance where there's also going to be an extrapolated perforated metal design in the canopy, and then in the garage there's a whole parking structure that there's going to be a mural taken from the main mural in the garage as well. So it's a pretty big undertaking, and as an artist, you know, I'm coming up with my idea on Procreate. However, the collaboration is being brought in by the art consultant who was brought in by the developer. It's like, you know, the trickle-down effect. The collaboration is between me, the art consultant, Weidner, the fabricator, the architect, which is LPAS, and the developer. So this is all to create this public art piece for this new development. And the collaborative effort of that, there's like a lot of voices at the table. There's a lot of people sitting at the table. And I think that the most important part about the collaboration is being able to listen to what everyone is looking for and finding the solution, which requires like some trial and error, but finding a solution to create the thing that was in my head. And as an artist, I absolutely need to be flexible in this conversation. And at the same time, you know, I also want to make sure if there's a part of my artwork that I feel is really important, I want to be able to stand up for it. But understand if there's like a structural parameter, you know, where do we meet in the middle? So to be successful at this collaboration, everyone needs to be, there needs to be like a strong level of communication and flexibility, and just like hearing the different perspectives or seeing the different perspectives and what lens folks are looking through, because the architect might be looking through a more structural lens. Same with the fabricator. Like, how are we going to install this 20-foot by 105-foot metal panel? I don't know. And I'm not supposed to know, but I need to be able to collaborate with the fabricator to say, okay, this is kind of my vision. And they say, okay, well, your vision, this is cool, but you need to be able to have like an anti-gravity field to do what you're wanting to do. So, okay, so what does that look like in terms of how do we structurally put that together? So there's a lot of conversation and flexibility that's involved with the collaborative process. The creative part, I would say, is the easy part. I could do a mural on Procreate until the cows come home, and but making sure that it's going to be cohesive with the development itself, with the design, with the vibe, really like what is a developer looking for, making sure that your creative vision aligns with all parties involved, as well as how can it be constructed. And that's where there's a communication between the fabricator and the artist, the fabricator and the art consultant. It's not a two-way conversation. It's all of the voices involved.
Zoe, can you expand on that and Weidner's role in this collaboration and also the communication aspect of it?
Yeah, the communication part, I think it's very easy to, that email thread that starts is like, okay, we're getting this going. But if you're not great at checking emails, let me know, let the people know so that they can kind of adjust, because I understand, especially when you're, if you have a lot of jobs going on and you're on site and you can't check your email as frequently, send hey, I don't check my email that often. Can you send me a text whenever there's something I need to, pay attention to? The patience, there's a lot of patience that goes into working with, everyone that Jaya has mentioned, especially when there's that many people at the table. But in regards to working with Weidner, these projects, we get going on them, but they take often months and months to actually see that vision kind of come to life. So being patient with that, but that's also, you have to juggle a lot of things and kind of passing off knowing when to shift your time is really important, but also just staying on top of things, being communicative. And I can't stress this enough also. I love a good phone call. I say this all the time. If you need clarification on something, don't wait for that right email to come in where you're like, oh, I get it, light bulb moment. Just make a phone call too to whomever you're working with. I can't stress that enough. People hate when I cold call, but I love it. But so go ahead, add to. Yeah. Add to the phone calls. Will likes to make phone calls.
I actually don't. She does them for me. She's much better at it. I actually just wanted to add a little bit to what Jaya was speaking about, because when we work on projects such as Jaya's, there's a big part of engineering, problem solving, a little bit of R&D that has to kind of to that. And as Zoe mentioned, it's not something that happens overnight. It takes time. We're having to collaborate with an architect, with a general contractor, with structural engineers, the city, even our own fabricators, understanding the parameters of the structure and how best to execute your vision and respect the integrity of it, but making sure that, hey, this thing isn't going to fall over and kill somebody, or that, a big gust of wind isn't going to create some weird noise because it's a perforated panel system. So the one thing I can kind of add to this is that it's a collaboration. And I think, Jaya, you said it best about being flexible. There have been projects that we've had to work with, and the artists will develop this beautiful sculptural piece, 10 feet tall, and it's like, okay, that's great, but it still has to get installed. So if you're working, for example, on sculptural art, if we have to put that on a crane or any type of boom or lift, you have to provide us attachment points. We'll provide you the specs of where that needs to go, but those things you have to provide as the artist, so that when our guys go out to install it, they're not just strapping this thing up with straps, because first of all, we're not going to do that. But second, we need to make sure that it can be done safely to both protect our team, anyone around, and also to make sure that we protect the art as well. So I think you touched on some really great points about the being flexible and understanding that sometimes the art might have to get modified just a tad bit to meet these requirements, especially as you start working on bigger scale products and projects. But it's a negotiation, it's a conversation, and it's that open dialogue that's really important to have when we're meeting on these types of projects. So, perfect. Thank you.
I think we're kind of entering the realm of giving the artist suggestions and advice on how to best collaborate with businesses like Weidner. So do either of you have advice on how emerging or even established artists can go about effective collaboration with other businesses? Do you have any tools that you might have?
I know that collaboration is the buzzword and communication is the buzzword, but it's so true. For me, I need good communication, and that communication I can work off of quickly. And so in turn, as an artist, I want to embody that. And maybe I can be a little bit annoying that way, sending off another email, hey, just confirming that we, have that set up and I'll get that over to you. That's where my type A comes in. But I think that, really embodying that level of professionalism where you are in communication. If you do not know the answer, do not pretend to. We are not perfect. And if you are working within timelines, based on, either with the fabricator, with the project. If you're working on timelines with the project, as an artist, you want to be able to deliver and meet your timelines. And I would say that I don't want to be holding someone up. And I can be flexible if the project shifts and moves, I just want to make sure it's not on my end. And if someone is looking for something else, I want to be able to deliver that. But I would say that as an artist, really embody that level of professionalism that maybe there's a stigma that artists don't have that. And that's where the business mindset comes in. I'm just beating communication now. This is communication.
No, you're hitting every point. I think, I think that it is really, really, really crucial to, as much as we've kind of already been stressing, to really treat this as a business. You are a business owner. This is your craft, and there's only one of you, and kind of being as prepared as you possibly can. So, like we've talked about the insurance, we've talked about having your website ready to go, putting yourself out there, communicating, finding ways that you communicate best, because in this world we kind of all communicate, through email, and it's good morning, team, that kind of thing. And I can really speak to how well Jaya really implements that in her practice. And like she said, her mornings, that's like where she kind of gets up. She answers emails. She takes care of all of those communications before she kind of goes into the studio. And there's such an importance to that, because you really have to show up for yourself and to, I can't stress that enough. And
show up for your business.
Yeah, show up for your business.
Show up for your business. And I know that, because I had a peek at some of the questions. I have a feeling it's going to be one of the last questions. I just got to jump in on this right now. But be your boss. Don't be your manager. Don't be your business, but be your boss. Because then you hold a level of responsibility, and you can say, Jaya, did you update that thing on the website? No. All right, we'll get her done. Jaya, do you have your inventory for your show yet? No, we'll get her done. And it removes an emotional aspect of the business. And when working with fancy folks, when working with developers, fabricators, people that have, gone to school for that stuff. Not to say that artists don't go to school for their stuff, but people that are going to facilitate on this really large scale, one of your art pieces. Be your boss and show up with that professional mentality. Be cool, have an attitude of gratitude, be kind. This goes beyond, obviously just working with developers and fabricators. But from a business standpoint, I find success in being a boss and not being a diva. And that being a diva can work for people. However, I think that that might not be as effective if you're working with a level of professionalism that are not divas. So meet them at their level of professionalism. Hopefully it's a high level. But yeah, I would say that the emotion, the diva mentality, there's a bigness that can be put aside. The ego can be put aside, and it's about the project and executing this as effectively as possible. And I think that would be someone that folks of this caliber would want to work with again.
I want to touch on deadlines really fast.
Ooh, love me some deadlines.
I want to touch on deadlines really quick. Because I understand that those are hard and weird, and I don't like them. I don't work well under pressure. That is where my anxiety thrives, when I'm under pressure. But here with us, like we were kind of already talking about, there are so many people involved in some of these processes, and deadlines are really, 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 really real. like way real. So when, I say, hey, this has to be done, it really actually has to be done, because especially if it's something that we're installing, that's our team. There's GCs on site. There's building managers, there's clients, people are coming in to watch it get installed. My ass is on the line. So I have to, I'm trying very hard to figure out how to be a little bit more strict about that, because the art side of me is like, well, you can't rush a masterpiece, but like we have to. Yeah. I hate to say, I hate this part. This part is really tough for me to understand myself, because I have always done everything on my own. I have always installed my own work and other artists' work. I've always done the production side of things, where I'm on my own timeline and I'll work 18 hours a day to get something done, but other people have their own schedules. And this is like not just this business, not just you as a business, but there are so many other companies and people involved. So deadlines are real. But I also work really well with people to help develop stages. I do a lot of studio visits as well. If you're in town, if we're working on something, I will come to you, we'll check it out. You can run me through what you're thinking, any problems that you might have, and then I work to help you solve those problems. And again, I want to reiterate that consultant role goes for me and the artist as well. I'm here to help you, because that success breeds from that learning and from being able to have somebody on your side and in your corner to go, this might not work. Let's see what we can do about that. But, we have 2 more weeks. Like, I do check-ins all the time too. Those cold calls. I'll call and say, how you doing? What do you need? So that deadline thing is huge. And then I had one more thing that I wanted to touch on. We're running into, with work on site, we're running into the construction site's own GCs and whoever's kind of running that site. They often are implementing their own OSHA training and things like that. So you might have a lift certification, but the GC might require something else. So kind of getting on top of that. Don't assume that permits are off of your plate either. There's a lot of research that kind of goes into that initial project. So kind of knowing those things. What?
I got a couple points. With you can't rush a masterpiece, but it kind of has to be rushed. So
but don't rush it. Like
don't. So I'm
like, they're real, but don't.
From an artist standpoint, yes, don't rush a masterpiece. So when you take on a project and you have your project parameters, like ideally it's going to start here and it's going to end here. You need to have this at this point. These are your what are they called? Milestones. These are your milestones. So, and I'm about to say something that I notoriously do not do. Design within reach of the project. This goes for muralists, this is especially for muralists, but you can design within the budget of the project. And I am notorious for over-designing. I have a budget of X. I'm like, okay, that means that I should spend about this much time on the wall, spend about this much time on the project, limited color scheme, this and that. And then I'm going to do the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. But that's on me. That's my fault for over-designing. Oh, I'm sorry. That's my fault for over-designing. However, jumping into a project, if you can consciously design within the project parameters and create something that you're proud of and that you love and that is like your vibe, and that you can deliver, that way it takes some of the stress off. As creatives, and I personally, I go extra. I am extra. But I always want to create something that is just like, it's going to hit it home. However, I take responsibility if that means that maybe I'm up on the wall 30 more hours than anticipated, and my team is on the wall 15 more hours than anticipated. And that's on me. When I'm working with, like, digitally, that I feel like I'm able to like rein it in a little bit more. But design within the project parameters, and you're going to take some of the stress off of yourself. I wanted to touch a little bit on like permits, insurance, all of that fun stuff. And like you might not know that, oh, you're supposed to go get the permit. I want to just say that one part of being professional is reading your contracts. And contracts can be just like a wall of words. You know, it's a lot of words. A lot of the words might not make sense. Read it to the best of your ability. Ask questions to your point person and understand your contract. Understand this with galleries and understand, with public art projects, because there might be something in your contract where, the permitting is on you, and you can negotiate that. You don't have to say yes, but know what is being expected of you from a contractual standpoint. And your deadlines or your milestones should be written out in the contract, your payment schedule. So all of this should be in there, and it can be brought up in conversation to either the art consultant or the gallery, and say, I don't understand this. Can you explain this to me? And, I don't feel comfortable with this, but I would with this. So your contracts really understand what you're agreeing to. And if you do need to require, or if the permits are on you, get some resources on who you need to talk to about the permits, what type of permits. Basically get the knowledge from something that you might not really understand. And the contracts do get easier to read after you've read a couple, and then you start to, oh God forbid, do not take my advice, but then you start to piece your own contracts together so that it's something that you feel confident saying, like if you have a team member or if you're approaching a gallery, say, this is how I like to work, especially with new galleries, or if they don't have a contract, or this is what I like to do. Just have it be simple, have it be a one page. Mine is of course not a one page, but make it work for you and know what you're reading. Get used to them, just like your taxes or your Schedule Cs. Get comfortable with them.
And then I think we have some time for some audience questions. So if anyone has any more questions for these two wonderful people, go ahead and raise your hand. Yes?
Just make sure to repeat the question.
Okay.
A question for probably Zoe. So what's the protocol for an artist to be considered?
So to repeat that, what's the protocol for the
protocol? Does the artist submits a portfolio to Weidner to be considered? Is it something that you're always reaching out? What's the protocol for that kind of outreach?
What's the protocol for selecting an artist?
So that's a great question. We are kind of working towards potentially eventually having a like a submission form on our website. But I do have business cards, and I encourage you to send me your work. Send me your name, introduce yourself, so that I can kind of keep you at the top of my brain for upcoming projects. But that outreach thing that I was kind of talking about, we don't always have the space for it on our individual plates. But if you can, and if you are able to, please always send me your work. Let me know who you are. Tell me a little bit about yourself. If you have time, we can always schedule coffee too. I love to meet people. I love to talk with people, figure out what their goals are, what they're looking to implement in their practice. So.
Thank you. And over there? That was partially my question. So to piggyback on that wonderful question for Jaya, what is the kosherness of working with multiple art consulting companies or art consultants? You mentioned a different consulting company that represents you, and then you're doing this project with Zoe and Weidner.
So just to repeat the question, sorry for the camera. What is your experience with working with different consulting agents? The protocol for that, yeah.
I would say know what your parameters are with your agents. So for instance, I work with Nisa Hayden at Hayden Arts Agency, and she focuses on my contemporary works, my works that I'm creating right now. And the outreach that she does, I want to make sure that I'm not crossing over with another art consultant company in Sacramento. So there's like this, overlap. But you want to make sure that, folks are staying in their lane, or we're all staying in our lane, and know where there's, there's the boundary where I'm going to work with another company on another tangent, and I will still pursue my own opportunities. And I think that just really knowing what the agreement is the most important thing.
Yes, there's a question in the back, and then we'll go to Brandon.
Question for Jaya: have you always worked with an agent? Did you ever work on your own, and is it really useful to make it?
So question for Jaya is, did you always work with an agent? I'm so sorry.
No, you do not need to apologize. Nisa is the first agent that I've worked with, and it's fairly recent with her. I've always represented myself and have explored, and so when I've worked with a gallery, the gallery has not been exclusive. They've not exclusively represented me because that's very limiting. But working with Nisa, there's more exploration on, how can she, for instance, Zoe, how can you place this artist's work in this facility? How can you place this artist's work in this, in this environment? And when you're working with someone, there's definitely, again, you want to have a level of freedom and knowing where you can also expand out of, and work with the right people. If it's not working, don't work with them. And that can be a gallery where it's just not vibing. So find your vibe, and you can do that on your own.
Then there was a question.
I actually have a question about Weidner. For Zoe. How big is the art consultant team, or is all the workload just on you?
How big is the art consultant team, and what
Is the workload just on Zoe?
and what's the workload on your part? Yeah, as an art consultant.
So that's a good question. Will is the VP of creative, so he oversees our creative design team and myself as well. There's a lot of teamwork that goes into the art consulting portion of the projects that we take on, but predominantly it is me placing the work, finding the artists, opening up that line of communication. I do a lot of client facing, so I'm making those presentations. I'm going over concepts with the client on behalf of the artist, but predominantly it's me. But again, in terms of the timeline on certain projects, I'm really able to give each one my individual time and a lot of care and consideration, because it's not happening overnight, which I thought it would. I was like, oh, we just do this. Yeah. So, yep. Yeah. But that's a really good question. There's a lot of teamwork that goes into it, but since we have so many things going on at different times, we have years planned out for certain things.
You want to just make one more comment on that?
Mm-hmm.
I asked that question because I know a lot of artists here are, interested in how to work with Weidner.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that pinpoints who is the direct contact.
Yes.
If there's multiple contacts that people should be reaching out to, right? So
Yeah. No, good question. Yeah, no, that's a great question. It is me. You call me. Call me. I love phone calls. But yeah, I think that's a really, really great question, and something I don't even think about, because I'm like, I think that is me. That's me. But I have a lot of support. We have so many people that work. So this is such a well-oiled machine. I can't stress that enough. But as far as your relationship to the company, you'll be working with me.
We'll take one more question. Yes.
I was wondering if Jaya could speak a little bit more about having worked with an artist collective and how that formed and what that was like.
So, how working with an artist collective, how did that form, and what was that like, Jaya?
This is going to be, we're going to go in the Wayback Machine because this is when I was 20. We're in the Wayback Machine now, all of us in this room in the Wayback Machine. The artist collective was called Red Ink Studios because the ad firm was bleeding red ink and they could not get out of their commercial lease in downtown Palo Alto, pre-Facebook. We just lay the land here, lay the land. So I was the first artist to be in Red Ink Studios. They basically opened up their commercial space that had nothing in it other than some cubicles to become artist studios. And there was no charge to the artists. This was to fill the space until their lease was up or someone would move in which case we would nomadically move to a new unused commercial space. And then we would do art, we would create art, we would do these bohemian art shows. We would have this very, I would say, bohemian collective. And the nomadic nature of it, we moved from the space in Palo Alto, we moved to a space in San Jose, we moved to a couple of different spaces in San Francisco. And this was all in my early 20s. That was right for me at that time and with my vibe. And I was doing installation work. You guys don't know what I do. Oh my gosh. I was creating these installs so that I could hang my art in this experience that I wanted people to have, this, weird, creepy carnival experience. And my work was very different then. And the way that I produced it and the way that I worked with people was very different then. And it was successful in its own right. That is not how I work now. I don't people well. And so my art studio now, I just want it to be my space. And I want to listen to my music. And I don't want to hear that person. And that's how I work now. But in that vibe, just starting out, that was the best way that I could have jumped into it. And it was a collective. I mean, we made it work. It was ragtag. But the idea of moving from unused commercial spaces can certainly happen as of now, because there's plenty of spaces that can be utilized for this purpose. And so that was how I started. It was a trip, and it was a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I don't do that now. I just do me.
Well, that was amazing. I learned so much. Did everyone learn a ton? Professional development event, check. That was like more than I could ever hope that it could be. So thank you all so much for being here and sharing your knowledge with us all.